Do you want them to submit without you ever asking, to think about you, feel your presence, and depend on you even while you quietly reshape the dynamic? There are methods that do not charm. They influence, they do not force, they spread. This is not a video for likes, nor for improving relationships. This is a guide to psychological leverage. Here you will learn how to weaken resistance, enter the mind, and become emotionally central without leaving obvious marks. These are 10 advanced influence techniques. If you were ever dismissed, overlooked, or replaced by someone less capable, this video becomes your precise correction. Because when you guide the mind, you no longer need to chase attention. Control follows naturally. Let's begin. Technique 1. Disrupt the frame, become the anchor. Let me ask you something. Have you noticed how someone can slowly pull you away from your own certainty? Not suddenly, not aggressively, quietly. You begin to doubt your judgment. You pause before trusting your thoughts. You look for their reaction before accepting your feelings. That wasn't connection, that was conditioning. And if you've ever felt that happen to you, stay with me. Today, you're not learning how it feels. You're learning how it works. This method isn't emotional, it's systematic. It functions like mental chemistry. First, you unsettle, then you stabilize. The bond formed here is stronger than comfort, stronger than reassurance, stronger than words. We're not here to be liked. We're here to enter the internal system and gently rewrite it. Here's how it starts. You don't attack their reality. You question it softly, casually, almost kindly. You say things like, "Are you sure it happened that way?" Or, "Sometimes what you say and what you do don't fully align." You're not accusing, you're introducing friction, small inconsistencies, subtle doubts, nothing they can directly argue against. But once doubt appears, certainty weakens. And when certainty weakens, the mind searches for stability. That's when you step in. Not loudly, not forcefully, calm, grounded, certain. Their emotional compass shifts and you become the reference point. Not because you demanded it, but because everything else began to feel unreliable. That's the moment, not before. Now the second phase begins. You become the anchor. You listen, you validate, you explain, but not as an equal, as an interpreter. If they're upset, you help them name why. If they're confused, you define what it means. If they question you, you reframe it as uncertainty or fear. Gradually, their inner voice stops sounding like them and starts sounding like you. No arguments, no force, just guidance. Because the moment someone needs another person to understand what they feel, independence fades and reliance begins. They don't notice it. That's why it works. At this stage, you're no longer influencing behavior. You're replacing their internal guide and handing them a new one written in your language. But this is only the surface. Once balance is gone, you can bring them to the edge, not by pushing, but by letting them feel how unstable everything becomes without you. And just as uncertainty sets in, you're there, not as a rescuer, but as the only steady presence left. They hold on, not because of affection, but because you prevent the fall. Yes, it's intense, but you didn't come here to be soft. You came here to understand control. And from here it goes deeper. Because the next step is not confusion, it's dependency, measured cycles, tension, relief, presence, absence. So subtle it feels natural, so effective, they reach for you even while unraveling. Stay with me, we're not stopping here. Next, technique 2, the controlled cycle of tension and warmth. Do you want her thoughts to return to you even in quiet moments? Do you want every free space in her mind to circle back to you? Then don't offer constant peace. Offer rhythm, closeness, distance. Warmth, withdrawal. Comfort, then silence. Repeat it carefully as if accidental, because the human mind bonds not to stability, but to patterns it tries to solve. The brain doesn't attach itself to happiness alone. It connects to confusion followed by relief. That pattern creates attachment. This is the rhythm of tension and comfort. Easy to understand, powerful to experience. Here's how it appears. Today you are gentle, present, attentive. You make her feel noticed, valued, as if the moment matters. Her system relaxes. Then, without warning, you step back. Not with anger, not with explanation, just distance, quiet space, emotional absence. The result isn't simple pain, it's searching. Her mind begins replaying everything, scanning for patterns, reasons, meaning. And when the mind looks for answers and finds none, it loops, again and again, like an emotional wheel that won't slow down. Here's the principle. Avoid rigid consistency. Be structured, not predictable. Distance follows closeness. Warmth doesn't arrive on demand. It appears when hope is almost gone. Timing matters because over time, her emotional system stops trusting its own rhythm and starts responding to yours. The unsettling part is this. She doesn't feel anger toward you. She reframes it. She believes she needs to try harder, that she hasn't reached you yet. So effort increases, more attention, more adjustment, more emotional investment. And this is where influence becomes automatic. Because when you control the rhythm, you influence the response. You determine when there is ease, when there is tension, when there is release. That point, you are no longer just a presence in her life. You become a reference point. Her world begins to revolve around that reference, yet it feels like her choice. That's the illusion. This dynamic doesn't feel aggressive, it feels intense, meaningful, emotionally deep. And when questions arise, there is no defense, only reframing. Doubt returns, the cycle restarts, not by force, but by pull. Now you understand why this pattern is so compelling, but what follows goes deeper, because emotions are only one layer. Next, the connection moves into the body. In the next phase, desire becomes imprint, sensation becomes memory, and the nervous system responds before thought does. This isn't persuasion, it's conditioning. The body remembers what the mind cannot fully explain. One intense moment can leave a deeper trace than years of conversation. That's why this process doesn't rely on arguments, promises, or explanations. It follows a simple sequence: arrival, impact, withdrawal. Not physical, neurological. You leave a mark on reflex, response, instinct, a signal registered before language. This is about turning intensity into an anchor. A moment so strong, so unexpected that the brain records it as both powerful and disorienting. The association becomes exclusive. The result is subtle but strong. Comparison fades. Alternatives feel distant. Familiarity forms beneath awareness, and this isn't about performance, it's about imprinting. When intensity alternates with calm, when response comes before thought, a signature is formed. Even if distance follows, the memory remains active. Then comes the contrast, presence followed by absence, connection followed by silence. Confusion deepens because now it isn't only desire, it's conflict, wanting something while questioning it. That tension locks in. This isn't closeness, it's influence through precision, not force, not pressure, patterning. And if this already feels strong, understand this: the most powerful lever hasn't been touched yet. Because next, the focus shifts from sensation to meaning. In the next phase, validation becomes substance, recognition becomes relief, and once approval carries weight, pursuit reverses direction. We continue. Next, approval as the strongest signal. Do you want her to think of you even when she decided not to? To reach out without knowing why? Then don't offer constant warmth. Offer relief. Become the moment that eases uncertainty. A word, a glance, a pause. When approval feels rare, timing becomes everything. Warmth appears after distance, light after shadow. Each acknowledgement is brief, precise. Then space returns. What's triggered isn't comfort. It's reward, not through touch, but through meaning. Validation becomes value. She believes you're simply being honest, but her system has already learned that approval equals worth. So when uncertainty appears, she doesn't look inward, she looks outward. Once that pattern forms, reversal becomes difficult. Warmth becomes selective. Attention becomes noticeable when absent. Each return feels earned. Presence becomes currency. And when intensity and judgment combine, waiting begins. Not for you, for confirmation. Do you see the structure forming? It doesn't look like control. It feels like connection. And that's why it holds. But this is not the end, because beneath desire and confidence lies something deeper. The fracture point where identity softens. That is where the next phase begins. Technique 5 begins here. Create an emotional rupture, not with anger, not with loudness, but with silence, with distance, with a sentence delivered calmly at the exact right moment. I don't know if you're what I'm looking for. Say it after closeness, after trust, after she felt safe. That contrast causes the impact. It doesn't hurt loudly. It fractures quietly. And when you see the signs, confusion, collapse, desperation, that's when you return. Not apologetic, not explanatory. You don't justify. You hold her, look at her and say, "It's okay, it's over." In this context, these words are not comfort, they are instruction. You are teaching her something critical. You are both the source of pain and the source of relief at the same time. From that moment, you're no longer just a person. You are regulation. Her nervous system begins to orient around you. Want to see it more clearly? After an intense moment of connection, you withdraw. You question her value. You let doubt surface. You let her cry. And just when she's about to shut down, you return tender, present, not for pleasure but for imprinting, so she never knows whether you are the one who breaks her or the one who saves her. That uncertainty becomes the cage. She calms only when you do. Many mistake this for passion. They call it intensity, depth, complexity. They don't see that the fragmentation has already happened. And if until now you've worked with emotion, desire, and discomfort, what comes next moves inside her thoughts. No pressure, no debate, no resistance, just ideas that feel like her own. Because the next technique doesn't control behavior, it controls the internal voice. Once you have that, there's nothing left to resist. Get ready for technique 6. Plant ideas as if they were hers. Do you know what real influence is? Not obedience. Influence is when the idea feels like it came from her, when she changes and swears it was her choice. When she wants you and believes it was freedom, that isn't mere persuasion, it's mental design. This is where it begins. And this technique isn't about convincing, it's about infiltration. You don't deliver statements, you use questions, you don't say, "You're being unfair." You ask, "Don't you think sometimes fear speaks for you?" It sounds caring, reasonable, safe, but it plants a thought she'll repeat when you're not there. Repetition does the work. Thought becomes belief. Belief becomes behavior. Behavior becomes identity. Another approach is indirect stories. Speak of someone else, a friend who lost something valuable due to pride, a person who walked away feeling they weren't enough. You're not talking about her. That's why it enters cleanly. Her subconscious accepts it without resistance. No defense triggers, no alarm sounds. The idea reaches the core untouched. That's the elegance of this technique. It bypasses logic, and once inside, you reinforce it lightly, almost casually. I've always admired people who can admit mistakes without fear. Say this after tension. I like when someone knows what they want and doesn't play games. Say it right before doubt. Each sentence is a seed. Seeds don't need pressure, they need time. When they grow, she won't see you. She'll believe she arrived there alone, matured, chose differently. The internal map has already shifted. This isn't manipulation, it's perception design. You're rewriting her operating system while she believes she's evolving. Think about it. How many times did you believe you changed by choice when you were really following a thought someone else planted? And if this feels intense, the next step is deeper. Technique 7 works with shadows, hidden fears, impulses, the parts she hides. We reflect her darkness back until she seeks your guidance just to feel whole. If you can plant ideas, you can plant reflections. Get ready. The shadow speaks, and you are the interpreter. Technique 7. Project her darkness back to her. Everyone has hidden parts, impulse, envy, desire, memories too painful to touch. What happens when someone reflects these back calmly? Escape becomes impossible because someone shows you who you are, not to heal, but to bind. Projecting her darkness isn't about criticism, it's about recognition followed by conditional acceptance. You notice her blind spots, need for control, fear of loss, quiet competition, subtle manipulation she doesn't admit to herself. You don't attack. You name it softly, precisely. Sometimes it feels like she needs control to feel safe. Then you soften it. I'm not judging. We all have parts we wish to hide. She stops because you didn't attack. You understood, you spoke to her shadow as the only one who could see it without rejection. That's where attachment forms, not from love, but relief. She stays close not because she wants you, but because you make her feel safe with herself. You become the place where she can remain whole without fear. Control deepens because the shadow now works for you. When you want limits, you remind subtly. You don't have to intervene. Her shadow acts. She adjusts herself. Not because you forced it, but because you activated her own hidden parts. She locks herself in. No conflict, no struggle. You reflect what exists, conditioning her presence. To feel understood, she must stay close. If this already feels heavy, the next step is the past. Oldest wounds, memories that never healed, not to repair, but to turn into leverage. Technique 8. Use her past to influence her. At this stage, she won't want to escape. She'll only want you to protect her from herself. Ever had someone show you a part of yourself you didn't even want to face? Comment if you already know which shadow shapes you, or if someone once reflected it back to you. Because when you influence how she sees herself, you also influence what she never wants to feel again. We continue. The past can shape us deeply if someone knows how to work with it. Technique 8. Work through her past. Some wounds never fully close. They stay hidden, covered, denied. Yet they keep echoing, and if you know how to approach them without rushing, without force, without appearing harsh, they stop being just pain. They become direction, because an unhealed wound doesn't only hurt, it reacts. This technique isn't about attraction, it's about influence at the most sensitive point. You begin by listening, not interrupting, not fixing, not advising. You let her speak. Everyone reveals their fracture eventually. Abandonment, humiliation, being replaced. The details are secondary. What matters is the meaning she attached to it. Once you understand it, you don't touch it immediately. You store it carefully like a sharp instrument wrapped in velvet. And only when the moment arrives, when she doubts you, questions you, or considers leaving, you don't confront her. You speak to the memory. I understand. It's like when they left and you felt you weren't enough. You don't say it harshly. You say it with a calm, almost distant tenderness that disarms her. That's where the shift happens, because no one goes there, no one names it so precisely, no one dares to acknowledge that place except you. The effect is immediate. She feels seen at a level that unsettles her. She can't hide, and yet she needs you present because you touched the pain and remained. That contrast between discomfort and reassurance creates a structure without walls. It only needs memory. You can deepen it. You use the wound to justify boundaries. If she was betrayed, you say, I know trust is difficult, but if you don't stay aware of this, you may repeat the same pattern again. She doesn't argue. She associates it with fear, with history, and she complies, not because you demanded it, but because her past already taught her the cost. This is where dependency begins to form. You're no longer just present. You're woven into her story. She can't explain herself without you appearing somewhere in the narrative, and narratives don't separate cleanly. Now consider this. If her wound already responds to you, what happens when you change how it's defined? That's the next step. Because the next technique doesn't work with memory. It works with identity, with the words she uses to define herself. Technique 9. Change her internal label, because whoever influences the concept shapes the character. We all carry a name no one else hears, a definition that guides how we treat ourselves. I'm strong. I'm hard to love. I'm complicated. I'm the problem. These aren't external phrases, they're internal identities, and whoever manages to shift that label rewrites the entire script. This technique is subtle and powerful because it doesn't try to guide her from the outside, it reshapes how she sees herself from within. You're not giving her a playful nickname, you're offering an emotional definition that sticks. It can sound gentle. You're my beautiful chaos. Or it can sound observational. You tend to pull away when someone gets close. Have you noticed? In both cases, you're doing the same thing. You're linking her behavior to a phrase that will echo in her mind every time she acts. You're installing an internal narrative that continues even when you're not present. And here's the critical part. If that label is repeated often enough, with warmth, with certainty, during moments of vulnerability, she begins to act in alignment with it. If you say, you're magnetic, she starts to feel it. If you say, you're intense, but closeness overwhelms you, you quietly weaken her ability to sustain stable bonds. She won't recognize it as influence, she'll feel understood. Over time, it feels true. And it doesn't stop there. Now you can use that internal label to guide behavior. When she aligns with what you want, you say, there you are, that version of you. When she drifts, you simply remark, that's the part of you that pulls away again. No raised voice, no accusation, just a reminder of the character you introduced. Because people crave internal consistency, she returns to that shape. Not out of fear, but out of identity. At this stage, you're no longer working with emotion alone. You're editing the story she tells herself. You're shaping the I am she repeats every day. And once someone adopts your words as part of their self-image, freedom quietly narrows. She can go anywhere, speak to anyone, build other connections, but your voice remains embedded in her internal dialogue. Now comes the final step. Disappear. Yes, disappear when she wants you most. Because technique 10 is about timing distance, absence used with precision. There are goodbyes that sting, And there are disappearances that leave a lasting mark. Not because of what was said, but because of what was removed. Not through force, but through timing. This technique isn't an exit. It's a silent impact. It's not about leaving forever. It's about stepping away at the exact moment she needs you, turning absence into a memory that lingers. You don't warn her, you don't dramatize, you activate it right after intensity. A confession, a moment of closeness, emotional openness. When her guard is down, that's when you step back. Not to punish, so that silence does the work. Afterward, every quiet moment questions itself. What happened? What did I do? Why did he step away? And the hardest part is this: you leave no explanation. Distance without closure isn't processed, it's replayed. It becomes a memory that doesn't fade. She'll look for you in thoughts, in sensations, in music, in people who resemble what you represented, and it won't resolve because you didn't vanish. You settled in before you stepped away. That's what few understand. It's not about how long you stay. It's about where you place yourself before you go. If you return, you do it calmly, naturally, without explanation, with familiarity, and then, if needed, you step back again. Not often, not impulsively, only when enough stability has formed to make absence felt again. This approach doesn't destroy, it reshapes. And if you've followed every step so far, disturbing certainty, introducing contrast, planting ideas, shaping identity, you're no longer reacting inside the emotional space, you're designing it. There's only one thing left: close the door and leave it open from the inside. Like the video if someone ever disappeared and left an echo behind. Comment if you recognize this pattern, or if it was once done to you without you realizing it. And listen carefully. When you step away at the exact moment, they don't miss you yet. They don't feel loss. They feel need. We'll meet again in the next ritual, and if I disappear, now you understand why.